Hey guys, welcome back to Dave Does It. I'm Dave, and sometimes I do things. And one of the things we're doing today is this old, crusty Hyundai Excavator. So this excavator, Mr. Dave and I rescued during COVID. It was abandoned in the woods, and somebody cut the whole wiring harness out of it. So with that said, it's been sitting here for roughly 5 years, and we haven't done anything with it. And now it's time to get to work. So let me go ahead, grab the camera. I'll show you what we've done this far and where we're going to get started again today. All right, guys, so when we got this excavator and it was abandoned in the woods, it wasn't in a great part of town, right? And it wasn't in the woods when it was parked. It's been sitting for so long, all the vegetation grew up around it, and we had to spend roughly a full weekend cutting everything away to get this out. And what we ended up doing is we zip tied the fuel shutoff solenoid open, jumped the starter, and I just ran power to the function coil, and we were able to get it out there, load it on the low boy, and here it sits. So when they cut the wiring out, they just went for any big bundles, and with that they cut the main harness. So I got started on this past September before I started bringing you guys along for the ride, and this is kind of what we did. So we had to patch up this entire wiring harness for the main control system. Now, I don't know if this computer's good. These Hyundais have a problem with the control monitor in the cab being bad, but theoretically now we should be able to flip the bypass switch up here if we have that problem, and the excavator will still function as normal. I don't know if this is going to work. This was an extreme pain in the butt in the schematic to do. You know, every wire was cut in this harness bundle to put this harness back together. You know, I used roughly 120-ish heat shrink butt connectors to put this together, and it wasn't just this side. The function coil side on the other side of the excavator was also hit. One of the connectors I had to cut in order to power up the function coil. So all that's left off today is we have one wire stub bundle right here. Right, that is for the computer controlled battery disconnect. So we're gonna bypass that. And these two little wires are gonna be abandoned now. So this was the trigger wire, and then the ground for the relay, and then these are the two power wires. And according to the schematic, that ran through a 60 amp breaker. Well, we have the main battery disconnect switch right here. That's feels like it's good. I got to get a meter on it and test it, but we're gonna probably reuse that. So with having a manual disconnect, we're not too worried about the key disconnect working. So those two small wires, I'm going to cap off. We got a 60 amp breaker to tie in those two power wires in. And then we just have to run battery wires. As you can see, like the big battery ground here, they just broke that stud off. So I got to get batteries in here, run the power cable over to the starter, and we should be pretty good. I got a hodgepodge box of wiring that we're going to pick through to try to find something that works here and get some batteries in here. And the only other thing I know that I have to do upstairs right now to get started is the remote solenoid for the starter solenoid is not mounted to the block. They've replaced that at one point in time, and it's just floating in there. So I got to take the original one that's bolted to the block off, put that on, and we'll get going. But this should be pretty quick, fairly simple. I might have to extend those power wires a little bit depending on where I mount the circuit breaker. And this puppy should be ready to roll. Hopefully it works. And my day and a half of putting this harness back together pays off. So we'll find out here shortly. I'm going to go pick through some wires, kind of see what we're working with here. All right, guys, well, here's all the cable we get to pick through. There's some big stuff that I already liked that was on top that I threw off to the side here. But we're going to dig through here and kind of find what we need. Obviously, we're going to have to cut at the length and crimp new ends on. But hopefully this is going to be a pretty straightforward day. I really hope the computer system and this excavator works. A lot of these were abandoned and parked because they go bad. So fingers crossed. I'm hoping it was parked, then it was vandalized, and that's why it was abandoned. We don't know the whole story on it. It was a package deal with a group of equipment that was purchased, and it's time to get rolling. We have a job coming up for this. Hopefully it pays off and this machine works. So we're gonna get some more cable out of here. and go over and start running wires. Hey guys, I just keep walking back and forth to the garage to get other tools and, you know, some connectors and stuff. And I know I gave you a teaser in an earlier video about these Unimogs out here, but I just wanted to show you what one of the proposed setups might be, and it's really cool. I had to share it. Check that out. That crane's even the same color. So I think the goal for at least one of those is going to be like a little service rig, which I think is really neat. You know, it's not really going to be useful for anything, but it's cool to have. Okay guys, we got the relays mounted. These are the 2 power wires. These just go to the distribution box. Those are the wires that power the fuse box up over here. And then these were the wires off the ECM to turn on the main battery switch for the starter, like off the ignition switch, without having to use this mechanical one here. So I'm gonna go over to the wire bin now. We're gonna go see if we can find some small wire. We're gonna do a power loop between the 2 terminals here and then leave a lead off to hook up to our batteries. Okay, over here in the bin, let's see what we got. This stuff feels kind of chintzy. Ooh, look at this guy. I like this. We could use that wire. Nice. I got to, I guess, go grab some cutters and come back. But that'll be a nice stub. We'd use the lead off to our battery, and it'll be like a new one. Okay guys, these are the cable stubs we're gonna use. We have the end stripped, as you can see. We have a really sweet snap-on crimper here. 3/8 drive. No more beating it with a hammer or trying to smush cables. So we're gonna start crimping. This would probably work a little better if I had a flat surface to work on, but it'll do. Stuff that in there. That's it. And you get a perfect crimp each time. Love this thing. So this one's going to be a little tricky. The terminal I got's kind of the wrong size, but I want to try to crimp both ends in one terminal. Like that. I think we're going to strip a little more off. Get a little more room in there. Oop. Yeah, that should be much more better. Much more better. Sure all the strands go in their home. Okay, butter it. Got that one good. And again, perfect crimp, and it hits both sides. So we're going to keep trucking along. These relays are going to be all wired up, ready to go. We already picked a cable that had our terminal for our battery lead. And see what's next. I got to start fishing the starter cable, so we'll get up top and take an eyeball at that and see how we're going to progress and move forward. All right, before we go up top, I decided I might as well just mess with the ground cables since they're so short down here. But I'd give you a quick peek. So that's how the relay bank ended up looking out with that little harness we just crimped. You know, we got the battery terminal end over here. So it was a pretty good lead. The ground cable is really short, so it grounds to the chassis here, goes up to the disconnect switch, and then from the disconnect switch to the battery. So that'll be a really quick one to take care of. I'll do that before I got to start climbing around the machine. And then that main power cable is going to be the last thing that we have to do before we could see if this big hoss is going to run. All right, guys, now we're ready to go up top. Mr. Dave just got here. He's making a ruckus, but we got all the ground cables done. So we're grounded to the chassis, up here to the battery switch, and then ready for the battery. And then while I was at it, we used the last little bit of scrap we had, and we did the battery crossover. All right, we're now on top of this behemoth and kind of see what we got going on here. So we got a remote starter solenoid that was obviously changed but never mounted on the block. So we got to try to get that old one off, get that on. We have a temporary power cable that I just decided to see if it's long enough. Then I don't got to make one. We got to take this temporary ground off, tighten up the starter bolt, and then remove this other temporary ground from when we had the batteries mounted up top to track it out of the woods. The only other thing going on back here is the eyelet on the alternator wire down here is cut, but the wire is still long enough to go back to the starter. So it should be pretty straightforward. I'm going to get underneath the machine, see if I can fish that power wire down. Maybe it's long enough to get to the battery box. Probably not. But yeah, it's pretty sweet. Got 12 Valve Cummins. Thing just runs. Well, I looked out per the usual. That starter cable was way too short. We got a new end on the alternator lead, and I got our new cable ran that's 10 miles long. We had to put an end on. So that should be it for up here for the most part, and then we can get some batteries in this, and hopefully we have juice and that ECM works with that main harness repair. I'm a little skeptical, but we'll see. And here you go, guys. We're all wrapped up here. We got the starter solenoid mounted back to the block, the alternator wire repaired, the new starter cable run down, got the mystery grounds off. So now I just got to run that starter cable in with the main harness over to the battery box, grab some zip ties, and we're ready for batteries. So that wasn't all that bad. Power lead's a little long. I'm out of connectors though, so I'm going to leave it this length, use the terminal that's on it, and we'll cut it down later. But yeah, I just got to chuck some batteries in this guy, and hopefully we don't let any smoke out. All right, guys, I'm a little nervous right now. I got the batteries all hooked up. I just flipped the battery switch on, and there's no smoke yet. So I'm gonna jump up in the cab and see what happens. All right, I'm climbed up here. I guess here goes nothing. See if the computer works. Keys down here. Hey, that's good. Computer powered up. We have an alarm for something that we can't read on the display. You hear the actuator. So the service modes work. That's good. So we got crank skis. No crank skis. Darn it. Well, I'm a solo man, but I have a remote on my multimeter, so I could read it from afar. So I guess we'll get that hooked up and see what we got going on in the back. So I was back in the schematic and chasing the wire for the start signal, or the crank signal, and then I noticed it popped the CPU fuse. So after tracing that out and found some things, it shares the same line for the pole on the fuel shutoff solenoid. So I unplugged the fuel shutoff solenoid. I now have 24 volts instead of 12 volts getting drugged down on the crank signal. So we're gonna see if she starts, guys. I'll get you in the tripod, I'll climb up in the guy here, and hopefully we'll do something and make some black smoke. Hey, look at that! Yeah! Can't complain. Just like every other 12 valve flick starts. It's been sitting for 5 years. This is awesome. Go up top and make sure it's not puking anything. Well guys, she's chooching. Starter solenoid ended up being bad. So we unplugged it. We had the proper voltage to the starter solenoid. So we'll have to get a fuel shutoff solenoid coming. It's bungeed open right now. But it's a ripper. And just like that, guys, today's a wrap. Mr. Dave already has a fuel shutoff solenoid on order, so we'll install that when it comes in. We have a couple more things to do here. It has 4 or 5 broken swing gear bolts, and then we got to rebuild the bucket cylinder and I think the dipper cylinder. Maybe it's a boom. Oh, the boom cylinder, it looks like. He said there were 3. I don't know which 3, but so that's going to be a big to do when we get to that point. But as always, thank you for checking in. Please hit that like and subscribe. And remember, kindness is free. It doesn't cost you anything to be a decent person, and try to inspire someone. Thank you.